Welcome to Fridays with Vistage. My name is Bill Black. I'm a fellow Vistage member and your moderator today. Today's webinar title is Happiness is Not the Key to Employee Productivity. The saying a happy employee is an engaged employee isn't as true as we once thought. Many business leaders are striving to make their workforce happier in order to retain their top talent and increase productivity. In this webinar, you'll learn why creating a culture centered around meaning is the key to increased engagement and productivity for lasting business impact. Our speaker today is Nikki Lewallen, and she is the head of partnerships at Emplify and the CEO of Rainmakers, a business development organization that accelerates growth for small to mid-market businesses through fostering relationships. Nikki has been a flagship accelerator to the organization's global footprint over the past 11 years, and her mission is to inspire people to their true potential doing what they love. As a keynote speaker, after many years of sharing the message Loving Mondays, Nikki realized her true calling in the employee engagement industry. In 2017, Nikki made a strategic leap to Emplify to build nationwide partnerships to impact 1 million employees in finding true meaning in their work. Ladies and gentlemen, Nikki Lewallen.
Awesome. Hey, thanks, Bill. And what a nice introduction. And I can't tell you how excited I am to be part of the Emplify team and every day getting to spend new ways learning about employee engagement and culture, one of the hottest topics that's out there. So depending where you are in the nation, good afternoon, good morning. I just wanted to kick things off with, just in case you've been contemplating a chocolate fountain or a kegerator, maybe a ping pong table in your office, you're in luck, because I'm probably going to save you some money today on that investment and give you some of the reasons or all of the reasons to say no to that. Today, we're really going to talk about what matters, what really matters when it comes to keeping your employees and seeing them put in their very best at work. I'm excited to spend the next 45-ish minutes sharing employee engagement best practices. We're definitely going to keep some time for questions. My goal is to leave you with actionable ideas that you can take back to your office and share, whether it's in your office or sharing with your clients. And I know I probably have a couple of Vistage chairs on here who are looking for ideas to take back to their group members. So why is it that I'm presenting this? You know, I spent 7 years on a keynote talk traveling actually throughout the Midwest called Loving Mondays. I'm really passionate about helping people love Mondays as much as Fridays. You know, how many of us, you know, see the countdown in the workplaces about, oh, it's hump day, it's almost Friday, and really we don't see that with Mondays. And, you know, loving Mondays at work is not about the things that are given to us as perks. It's about waking up and feeling like we have a purpose and really feeling those things that make us come alive. And so I'm really excited to share more with you about that. I don't know how many of you have a foundational like phrase in life or principle or quote. Bill mentioned my purpose and the reason why I came to Emplify. I've had the same mission statement for many years, and it's to inspire people to their true potential doing what they love. Because I just see as I get older, time flies by, like it goes by so fast, and why are we spending time doing anything that we really don't love? And I found a quote, and I've had this for a number of years. It's on my Rainmakers website, it's on LinkedIn, it's everywhere I am online, and I firmly believe in it, and I've built my my team on it over the past 7 years at Rainmakers, and it's really like that foundational phrase that I stand on, and my team has too, and I've had very little turnover. And I believe that, you know, at the end of the day, we were all put on earth for a purpose and to do something meaningful, and we crave that. Like everyone craves feeling that they're doing something purposeful. And all of us, every single human wants to feel purpose. And as leaders, here's the key. Every single person on this call is a leader. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in Vistage. It's our job to help other people in this earth to navigate their way to the right seat on the bus and really help them win. When we take the title of a leader, whether that's a coach of a softball team or soccer team, or whether that's a leadership title in our workplace, it's our job to help our people be the very best version of themselves. And there are a whole lot of components to that. I mean, we can guess all day, and that's what a lot of people do, is try to figure out, well, what does that mean? And I'm so excited to be part of the team at Emplify, because every day I'm working alongside people that study this. We're actually scientifically studying what helps people and what drives meaning. And so before we go any further, I just want to share my quote with you, just because if I get any opportunity to share my quote or my English Bulldog, I do. And so I saved the English Bulldog for today, and I'm going to share my favorite quote. So here it is. I'm just going to read it out loud with you. Feel free to read along. The master in the art of living makes little distinction between his work and his play, his labor and his leisure, his mind and his body, his information and his recreation, his love and his religion. He hardly knows which is which. He simply pursues his vision of excellence at whatever he does, leaving others to decide whether he is working or playing. To him, he's always doing both. So I've never met a person that didn't like that quote or wasn't inspired by that quote, or they didn't add it to their online social profile. So feel free to take it and put it somewhere. But as you think about it, as humans, we're all aligned in things that bring us, or we want to be aligned in the things that bring us true joy and fulfillment, and we strive for excellence. And when we feel that, we feel alive. As leaders, if we help our people get this, they're never going to leave. So think about if people are feeling like purposeful, they're feeling like they're doing excellent work at the end of the day, like people don't want to leave that. So here's the deal, the real deal. Across the nation, if you look at the United States, 70% of people are not engaged at work. 70%, that's scary. Stats actually show that 1 out of every 4 employees is actively disengaged. So what is actively disengaged? That's when you have like a cancerous employee situation within your organization. So if all of us are leaders on this call right now, it is really scary to think that there are people sitting back in our workplace that are in that scenario, causing more harm to the organization. Unfortunately, the stats haven't changed much in the past 10 years. So if you were on a webinar 8 years ago, you probably heard the same exact statistics, that the majority of employees are not engaged at work. But here's my facts, that no one wants to be disengaged. There's no employee that says, yep, that's why I joined this company, I want to be disengaged. As leaders, I believe that we are the primary catalyst to help employees engage. It is our job to do that. And so we can't be, burying our head in the sand. And number 3, companies, this is a fact, my fact, companies produce more and have more fun when employees are engaged. So here's the $1 million question that all of us are on this call for is, okay, how do we change this? So here's some good news, that when you look at the adoption curve, like the bell curve that we're all familiar with, we're now seeing the late majority of the United States executives adopt the belief that employee engagement is critical. It's a critical initiative for business success, which is a great thing. We're seeing titles like Director of Employee Engagement, Director of Culture Change, or we're seeing top priorities in organizations, like a top objective for the next quarter being around employee engagement or culture, which is a huge step in the right direction. But here's the problem. Only 20% of executives in 2016 that have culture and employee engagement at the top of their list actually feel that they're making movement, that they're actually seeing the needle move. And last year, we spent $720 million, which I think, honestly, I would think we would have spent more. Think about all the things that we buy just because we hear that, a ping pong table or something is going to affect change, and we go out and we spend money on it. And 20% of the time, we can see that that's actually moving the needle, and we're spending a lot of money. And so, like I said, executives are investing in things that they heard that another company did. A lot of times the tech innovation of ping pong tables and foosball tables, they're buying more gift cards and doing more perk incentives. We have a new snack bar and coffee bar in our location. Here's a great saying that I learned from one of our colleagues here at Emplify. Foosball tables help employees cope with stress. Conversations help employees eliminate stress. But what conversations do we need to be having? I think that's the challenge, is like, what do we need to be talking to our employees about? So when you thought earlier, when I opened up and I said, you might have been thinking, okay, which am I going to do, the chocolate fountain or the kegerator? At the end of the day, that's all a solution for quick happiness, which is temporary, but it's not the platform to eliminate the challenge. So guesswork and gut decisions don't work for culture, just like they don't work for any other area of our business. And one of the greatest challenges is we've got metrics to be able to trace back challenges and really be able to tell a story in almost every area of our business. Like, can you imagine a CFO showing up to the boardroom and presenting numbers that he thinks are right? We don't do that in the finance department. Why do we do that in HR or in the culture space or in executive leadership with people? So the annual survey, Oh, there we go. The popular annual survey is dead, and happiness is not the thing that keeps your people. So if we look at, how much the workforce has changed, just looking at the people who are actually in the workforce 10 years ago versus now, you can see that we're not the same people. So to think that doing the same things that we did before are going to work now, we have to have different methods. And our time that we have to engage people just gets shorter and shorter. I know that everyone's worried about the millennial generation and how do we communicate with them? How do we engage them? Well, right now, just actually the 2016 statistics said that the average millennial is staying in the workplace for 2 years. I think it's shortening, like the last statistic I heard was like 18 months. Here's the thing, we can't be doing annual surveys, asking our employees to have a voice and give feedback once or twice throughout their entire tenure at work. It can't be annual. And the other thing is it can't be revolving around happiness, because you can have a fabulous breakfast event at your office. You bring in this nice catered breakfast and have a really fun time for an hour. But by the time 12:30, 1 o'clock rolls around, you're hungry again. You forgot about the big breakfast that you had. You're back in your work. You might be back in the stress that you're experiencing before. And those happiness things are so temporal. So when we look to see, where leadership is right now with solving this problem, we talk to companies all day, every day about what they're doing to, drive retention and engagement in the workplace. And there's often a big discrepancy between what the leader thinks, which is what you see on your screen many times, and then what the employees think. The reality is usually pretty darn different. So here's where we're going to turn and focus the rest of our time on the difference between happiness and meaning. So productive workplaces today are measuring and driving meaning, and that's the shift. I know I'm surrounded by a whole group of hundreds of leaders on this call, and I'm sure that 90% of you have seen the Simon Sinek's TED Talk, Lead with Why. And this is exactly that. That came out, 10 years ago or so, and everybody's, on board and trying to adopt that in the workplace. And that's really what it's all about. Employees are most engaged when we as leaders help align their why with their work. I love this quote. Oh, my slide is just a little bit behind. There we go. I love this quote by Jim Collins. It's impossible to have a great life unless it's a meaningful life, and it's very difficult to have a meaningful life without meaningful work. So very similar to the Michener quote, as humans, we're born for a purpose, and the work we do is a critical component to our purpose. We spend 1/3 of our life at work. The average worker spends 1/3 of their life at work. And so if you look at driving meaning in the workplace, an engaged staff is 44% more productive than a satisfied staff. Think about an engaged team the last time you were on one or leading one, and what does it feel like? You can feel like the high energy. You can see the team and the challenges they have. You feel the fresh goals. They're talking regularly. They're joking. They're celebrating. They're high-fiving, all expressing their ideas together. Meaning drives performance. So employees are not only driven by their why, but the company why. So think about the business with the clear purpose and where their culture is. My accounting firm, I think I'm off on my slides here. I'm sorry, I was just behind on this slide. Okay, so meaning drives employee productivity. So an engaged staff is 44% more productive than the satisfied staff. Think about an engaged team, like I said, and they are sharing those challenges, fresh goals, they talk, they interact. Now, moving on to performance, when employees are not only driven by their why, but their company why, they think about the business with a clear purpose. And what is their culture like? I have an example of an accounting firm, my accounting firm. Their team, I don't think they've turned over in the past 7 years we've been working with them, maybe 1 or 2 people. Their mission is they work towards growing the business to be able to give 5% of profits back to nonprofits that the employees choose. And I mean, it just makes me inspired to want to work with them, let alone the very little turnover that they experience, because they're a purpose-led company very directly tied towards employees being engaged in that overall mission. So obviously, if you look at a company that has engaged employees, they're driving profit. When employees are engaged, the output of work shows. Statistics show that 21% increase in profitability when you have an engaged workforce. So now I'm going to walk us through, we have 4 steps to inspiring meaningful work. And I'm going to walk you through, and hopefully you can take some notes back. And I know you have a copy of this PowerPoint, but take back ideas that you can apply in your workplace. So first of all, the first step is great leaders inspire meaningful work for employees in these 4 steps. And first of all, they start by understanding what drives meaning. Second, they implement a system to be able to measure consistently, to go back and see if they're moving the needle on those things that they've figured out are driving meaning. Third, they seek to understand by listening to their employees and diving in deeper to what the data shares. And then finally, these leaders take action. Leaders who take the time to listen to their employees and then take action based on their feedback, it's the magic recipe for engagement. So think about the opposite. Leaders who never ask their employees for opinions or feedback, and they never take action on what really matters to the employee. Don't forget, employees join organizations, they leave leaders. So people join for the overall organizational mission, and then they're leaving because of a bad leadership issue. And the same is true on why they stay. They join the organization and they stay because of their leader. So let's dive in to defining meaning in the workplace. So here's our definition of employee engagement. We feel it's a head, heart, and hands connection to the company, but I'll just read it. It's when you have an employee, the employee's intellectual and emotional connection with their employer, demonstrated by motivation and commitment to positively impact the company vision and goals. So really, if you look at the difference between happiness and meaning, you're going from a good to great. You're looking at employees who say, okay, am I going to stay? Or, how can I really be an integral part of this business and move the business forward? You can be completely satisfied with your job and really hate it at the same time. I mean, a happy employee can be at work, doing what they do, but going out on an interview on their lunch break. And an employee who's experiencing meaning, on the other hand, they're the ones that are showing up at work and giving 115% every day. So what drives employee engagement? So as I shared with you, I love being part of the team at Emplify because we have a team of researchers that are out and identifying scientifically what's driving meaning in the workplace. We found that there's 14 drivers that are directly related to employee engagement to help bridge that gap between employees and the meaning they experience through their work. And so there's 14 different drivers, and if we wanted to go through, I'm only going to share with you the top 5, I believe, that really drive into meaning most, like when we're getting reports back and interacting with our clients, the ones that we see that are most driving the needle forward towards meaning. But if you look, there's 14 different drivers, and if you wanted to set up a time outside of this, after this call, we can walk through and talk through many of these and really look at the full scope. But let's go ahead and dive in and look at really the key 5 that are truly driving meaning by the numbers that we're seeing through the reports we're doing with our current clients. So first of all is autonomy. Autonomy is when employees are trusted to use their expertise to make decisions about how they do their jobs. So think about a work experience where you had a lack of autonomy. What an awful job experience that probably was. And think about how disengaged you were. You're doing what you do to show your employees you trust them and empower them. Like the focus of autonomy is really driving the opportunity to let those employees make their own decisions. The second one we see is role clarity. Role clarity is when employees can connect their daily work tasks to the purpose of the business and have clarity about what that work is. So without a vision, the people perish, right? It's important to have a company vision, and just as important to help each individual employee understand their role, how they win, how their work greatly impacts the overall business. The third one is utilization, that we find really driving meaning. Utilization is when employees feel that the organization effectively uses their abilities and skills in their role. There's nothing worse than being bored at work. And have you ever had a job where you like watch the clock? You are probably pretty quickly or pretty ready to get out the door. Are you using tools to understand your people and make sure that they're on the right seat of the bus? Think about, one or two people that you could take to a coffee or a lunch and ask them, like, how do you think you can make a greater impact in this business? And just listen. Like, if all of us picked out one or two people that we could spend time with once a month and just ask that open-ended question, we value you, and how do you think that we could better use your skills and better use your passions in this business? And just as a leader, listen to them. They're probably going to come up with a couple of things that are really going to help to move the business forward, as well as helping that person really feel heard. Number 4, which is probably no surprise, is your manager is a direct driver to how engaged you are and how you feel meaning. That feedback that you're getting from your manager and the conversations, especially one-on-one conversations that you're having with the manager. Here's our definition. A broad assessment of the relationship between the employee and his or her manager that looks at respect, feedback, fairness, development, and advocacy. So, think about, for each of us, we've had a bad boss. Think about the worst boss you've ever had. Say their name, just to yourself for a second, and just like feel like how that makes you feel. Thinking back about a disempowering manager and that experience in your life, you definitely weren't tied to having a meaningful work experience. So when you don't have a manager who respects you, listens to you, develops you, it's nearly impossible to find meaning at work. So as leaders, we entrust our managers to carry out our vision, our culture code, our core values. And how are you getting feedback, from your leaders to make sure that those things are happening? How do you really know? I mean, could they be showing up at the boardroom table saying that they're doing one thing and trying to move your vision forward and inspire people? But how do you really know, as their leader, the leader of those managers, are they really doing that? And then the 5th driver that we see very popular is feedback. Our definition is employees feel that they receive adequate and helpful feedback. So let's think for a minute, pause for a minute, and think about the last time you gave positive praise to one of your employees. Hopefully it was sometime this week. We're on Friday, like most of us are working Monday through Friday. So when was the last time that you as a leader gave positive praise, gave constructive feedback to help that employee get better? I mean, I think if we're not measuring and holding each other accountable to that, it's pretty easy to be like, oh, another week went by and I haven't sat down and given feedback. What's that regular system that we have in place to be able to do that? Because feedback is a direct tie to meaning, which directly affects employee engagement. So next is, now that we understand what drives meaning, and like I said, we've scientifically found there's 14 different drivers. All employees need those on different levels. And then I just shared with you the 5 things that we find are most impactful, like what's coming back on our assessments most regularly. So now that you know that, now we have to figure out a medium to be able to measure and be able to get a standard set of results regularly. So that's one of the things we pride ourselves on at Emplify, is that we found a simple system to be able to regularly get a numeric representation to have metrics on the engagement area of your business. Being able to really dive in, hone in, and see, based on team, based on leadership, each leader, based on each location, you would get a baseline measurement for your entire company, obviously, to start. That would be really smart. And then be able to watch on a regular basis, we suggest quarterly, how that is fluctuating based on the things that you're doing to move the needle. So, if you did implement a new feedback system into the business that everyone was going to be working on for the next 2 to 3 months, we'd want to see, the impact that that's making in the business. So to be able to have a regular baseline and to be able to measure the things that you're trying, because not every culture, not every company has the same algorithm, if you will, for making a movement on engagement and meaning. Everyone's different. And so being able to have a regular platform that measures that to make sure what you're doing is working. So here's some of our measurement best practices for some of you that might be putting together some different tools now. Here's some tips for you, and here's some of the best practices we follow at Emplify. So first of all, the assessment has to be short. So under 7 minutes, we've found statistics show that we need to be under 7 minutes for the time that it takes for someone to log in or sit down and write out that feedback that they're giving, and on a regular basis, keeping that under 7 minutes. The next is making sure that we're measuring the right things. So what are the right things? We've found that there's 14 drivers. So in your business, figuring out what are those key drivers that are most important to move the needle. And many other things. The other is, I'm not going to go into each one of these. We can definitely like have a conversation offline if you'd like to dive into all of our best practices, but confidential is so important. I mean, you want employees to truly open up and share where things are so that you can really know where things stand and how to make things better. And if you've got a tool that you're administering yourself, like a lot of times people use a Survey Monkey, and that's great if you're trying to get some, feedback on the last employee meeting, just some general feedback. But when it's about meaning and employee engagement and asking about direct manager relationships and coworker relationships and how trustworthy the employees feel about the organization, all of those things need to be done in a confidential manner. And we suggest a third party is managing that, or you have a third party tool to be able to do that. And then like I was showing before, being able to filter results down to subgroups is only going to help you be able to make decisions based on the teams that need certain help, rather than in general implementing a system for the entire company that might be something that's needed for 20% of the company. Being able to filter those results and see where to focus your initiatives most for the right people, doing the right activities for the right people. So the fourth process in inspiring meaningful work is to ask clarifying questions. So you get a report back and there's a few things that have been confirmed that your gut, like you had a gut feeling about certain things. And on the other hand, you see like other information that comes back that you just had no clue. Like our CEO at Emplify said the first time that he did it, he felt like he was getting splashed in the face with cold water. He was like, wow, what does this mean? I need more information. If there's, let's say, a big red flag in your organization saying that shared values is an issue, your mind as a CEO or an executive starts racing. And rather than jumping to conclusions, being able to have a medium to be able to ask for more clarifying information to figure out what does that mean. Could be something pretty simple, like our last employee meeting, the overview presentation that we had about our values was very different and I'm just not clear. Could be that. It could be that a leader in the organization is demonstrating some behavior that is causing employees to feel disconnected, like on the values that you profess in the organization. Could be something much deeper. So it's really important to take the time to ask direct feedback to the employees and really gain opportunities to understand and be able to craft responses based on what employees can bring to the table. So we believe, and I'm sure most everyone believes on here, that people support what they help create. So employees are going to jump in and really be part of something if they help to create that. So isn't that the truth? I mean, you can look back in different scenarios. I actually just learned this, I would say a couple of years ago. I have a quarterback on my team at Rainmakers, and I just didn't even really understand this concept until she started to come up with some different ideas that when I would see that we would implement her ideas, she was behind them like 110%. She's championing those. And now, like I've just learned, I'm like, okay, well, if I see that something's broken and I can bring it to Amber and I can share with her like something that like the problem and have her brainstorm on it and come up with a solution that she's cheerleading, like I watch how, I mean, she owns that and takes it and moves it forward. So the more that you can, have employees give a voice, get feedback from those employees, and then show them how their feedback is being part of the implementation plan that you're putting in place, the more that they're going to be engaged in the work that you're doing as an entire company. So fourth in the 4-step process of inspiring meaningful work is to take action. So we've all been part of teams where we get feedback from employees. We've done the annual assessment, annual surveys, and then we don't ever hear anything. I know I give my input, but I don't hear anything. I don't see anything changing. So it's so important, obviously, to move the needle, like just from a standpoint of letting employees know how their feedback is helping and the things that you're doing. A, that's really important, but B, nothing's ever going to happen unless we take action. So I love this quote: take action, an inch of movement will bring you closer to your goals than a mile of intention. So at Emplify, we see that most companies on a quarterly basis are taking action on 1 or 2 things. And usually if it's 2 things, one of those is super simple and the other one might be a little bit more complex, because we see that a lot of times why companies don't take action is because it's just so overwhelming. They've got, a 400-page binder of an assessment that they had from a consultant that came in with all the different ideas and what they could do. And it's like that paralysis of analysis thing. They just so much, they don't even know what to move on. So best practices is, if you're going to see yourself like truly taking action, you've got to be regularly breaking these things down into 1 or 2 initiatives. So I wanted to give a couple of case studies. We actually have been very pleased and fortunate, blessed with our relationship with Vistage, and we have 3 clients that have had some amazing results just, I would say, in the past 60 to 90 days, just very recently. And they've been very open to sharing with their different Vistage groups and sharing with their fellow group members. And I just wanted to share, 3 of our success stories of Vistage clients, just kind of a little case study and just some best practices on what they're doing, and hopefully some of these ideas are helpful for you too. So the first case study, is with Stevenson Equipment. So they're based out of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. They're a rental supply company for construction, about 140 employees and 6 locations across the state. So we found, if you look at the left-hand side of your screen, the lowest locations, the greatest challenge, I would say, for disengagement were these 2 locations. And then we found that there were 2 main drivers coming back, which, hey, look, they're out of all of our 14 drivers, they're 2 of the ones we talked about, very popular, to really disengage employees and have them experiencing that lack of meaning, manager and feedback. And so after they went out, they got this information, they went and asked clarifying questions to these 2 locations. And although the quantitative results appeared to be below average, the open responses revealed a very big issue around leadership on these particular teams. And so what they did was they reorganized the hierarchy of these 2 locations. And right now they're feeling the effects, like they just feel the overall shift in culture and change. And we're really excited. I think it's another month, if I remember right, before we're going to be measuring their next steps to see where the needle is really moving. But they're already just experiencing like a lift in the energy of those teams and really starting to see the needle move. So what we saw with Stevenson that they did really well, a couple things. Having a confidential platform that they were using. They were really great at asking the right open-ended questions. Our team helped to craft the 1 or 2 questions that they sent out to really gain clarity on what was going on, to know that they needed to reorganize those 2 location leadership teams. And because of filtering the results, we knew exactly which 2 locations were most struggling. So those were just a couple of best practices on Stevenson. The next one, this has been an incredible case study. We've been celebrating their success because it's just a really quick turnaround that's moving the needle. So I'll share with you TH Marine. They're out of Huntsville, Alabama. They're a ship accessory manufacturer, 70 employees, 3 locations. So they found one team that was really the emphasis for driving down their engagement score, and then found that the 2 drivers were utilization and feedback. And so what they did, they went out and invited their production team to a Kaizen meeting that really diving into the process of what they were using on the production floor. And then from that meeting as a team, they took the suggestions back on how to redistribute and reorganize the shop floor, purchase some equipment, pretty simple. Like once they figured that out, outside of reorganizing the distribution of people and the flow on the production floor, purchased a couple pieces of equipment because a couple of employees had expressed having some severe back pain that was causing them to, like, actually 2 or 3 people quit because of that. So if you look below the line here, production's meaning on their next score, after we went back and then measured after making these changes, went from terrible, like the lowest that we have, to above average. So basically, if you thought like a 40%er to like a 75% and huge increase. They had a 30% increase in productivity on their shop floor, and they did the math on their overall annual profit gain. So output of the number of boats they were making was an increase of $2.8 million in boat production. So pretty incredible. We've been celebrating them, and just after a couple months, what's happening. So can't wait to see what the future holds. So just a couple of best practices along the TH Marine story. So just providing a platform for feedback. They did this through the Emplify program called Insights, but they also did this through the Kaizen engagement session, where they sat down and went through that training together and really figured out how do we get employee feedback based on this training program and get people in the right places. Focusing on building trust, and just they have been so good about getting feedback from employees and then saying, like, your back issues matter to us. Like, this is important. We don't want people having back pain. We want you to be able to regularly express like what's going on in the workplace, and we want to be able to make changes. And so just really building a culture of trust, and then obviously taking visible action because the results are happening. They're sharing the results, the outcomes, and making changes on their shop floor for the actual production line. That was the word I was looking for, the production line of people, shifting people around to make things more productive. And then the third Vistage client success story is with a company called Steel Encounters. They're out of Salt Lake City, Utah. It's a steel fabrication installer. They've got 265 employees and 4 office locations. So again, they did their survey and found one particular office location, and then within that, they found one particular type of professional that was struggling. So going even deeper, it was the one particular office location, and then one particular type of professional on their team having the most struggle, and saw that that was a pretty big red flag, and wanted to spend the time really focusing on what the challenges were for those engineers. So they found that there's 3 things that the engineers were struggling with: utilization, fairness, and manager relationship. So on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see what happened. They became laser focused on that one location and removed an engineering manager to really drive the department. We're not in the business of firing people, and this person didn't get fired. They just got reorganized into a different role, no longer managing that team of engineers. And then focused on a coaching program and created an open forum to discuss results and gather feedback from those engineers. So something they didn't have before was a regular way to get together and get feedback. And so now they're having a focus group time to be able to share that and gather together. Couple of outcomes. So one division, the Northwest office, increased engagement points in a 90-day span by 11 points, which is very significant. A good increase in engagement on a score would be like 2 or 3 points. We're really happy about the needle moving by 2 or 3 points. So to see an 11-point jump in engagement is pretty amazing. And then overall, just the engineers increased by 20 points for all the things we were doing to help them redefine, the leadership of the team and really help them build trust among each other. So pretty cool. The one thing that all of these companies have in common is, before I go there, sorry, just a couple things about Steel Encounters, and I shared this, being very transparent, open, focusing and prioritizing on action. And then here, they really use the mobile approach, which we center our technology at Emplify around a mobile solution, making it super simple. I mean, everybody has a smartphone not too far from them for more than 5 minutes. And so if we can bring the platform for them to be able to give feedback regularly to, the thing that sits on their hip all the time, and make it super simple, we try to do that for as many companies as possible, and found that that was one of the winning opportunities that really helped to drive change at Steel Encounters was using a mobile approach, using that mobile solution to get more participation. So if we look at, we boil this down and we look at all of the things that these companies have in common to move the needle, they're using the Emplify process, which is really a 3-step process. One, we go through and we measure. So we figure out, we found the 14 drivers, and then figuring out the key things to measure and regularly getting a numeric representation on where companies stand with engagement, where their teams are. And then we're going to move into looking at a diagnosis and having people that are employee engagement experts really be able to look at like what's happening based on these numbers. What is the story that these numbers tell, to be able to diagnose the challenge? And then third, we're going to figure out what are we going to go and ask employees and spend more time understanding so that we can really solve and implement based on employee feedback. We believe that employees are the best to help us solve problems because they're working near and dear to the challenges every day. They're in it. So if we see that there's a challenge that we need to understand, then they're going to be our best ally. And just going deeper, being able to really hone in and focus where the data is to be able to walk alongside of the Emplify process and hone in more on where things are to really help move the needle, because we're making an impact on the things that are most important and most critical. So with that, I think we'll open it up for a little bit of Q&A. I've got my email up here. If there's certain things that you've jotted down before you go into Q&A and you're like, I'd really like to dive in further and just really get an understanding of a particular, item, of a particular driver, you can send me an email. We can set up a time to walk into like a culture engagement session, really do a brainstorm, but I'd love to open it up. I think Bill's gonna open up the line for some questions.
Terrific job, Nikki. That was great information. And of course, it's very timely information for a lot of people today. We have one question. Do you find the primary drivers vary from industry to industry?
Yeah, so when it comes to industries, we do find that most industries have similar issues, but there's, like in healthcare, for example, we find a lot of issues with manager and coworker relations. Like it comes up a lot more than utilization comes up a lot with like manufacturing and industrial. So one of the things that we're trying to figure out is in our Emplify pool of 12,000 employees or something that are using our tool, how could we get better at segmenting our data to help the companies that we help be able to compare themselves across industry to industry, because they're all unique on the drivers that make them most successful. I hope I answered that right.
Makes sense to me. So we had one comment and a question. It's hard to keep employees happy and communicating general messages to them to influence a new growth culture can sometimes lead top players to leave. Why do you think that happens, and how can we prevent it from happening? And the second part is, how do you remove their fear and convince them everything is for the best of the company and its employees?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is communication. Having very open communication. So directly with that person and their leader, I feel like people start to feel fear, or they start to feel anxiety or make assumptions about what's going on in the company when they don't really have a clear communication about what's going on. So my suggestion is to make sure that those lines are very open and make sure that there's a regular cycle, a regular pattern of employees giving feedback directly to leaders, and then leaders being able to answer and connect the dots on what matters to them and have those conversations at the right time. Because sometimes people will challenge us on, why are you going into an organization every quarter and getting feedback? It just seems like overkill. Well, one week upon another, things change and you start to gain fear over this, or somebody said this in this hallway conversation. So I think as leaders, the most important thing that we can do is have a way for employees to give like confidential feedback, but on the other side, making sure that we have a regular cadence to have direct communication and have a trusting relationship with our people so that they open up and share what's going on, and they're not like making decisions to do something based on like how their gut feels about it.
Makes a lot of sense to me. So we have one question that's, can you please address employees who work from home? I get worried about retention and engagement when I can't see them on a daily basis. Most of the employees work from home in this company, and the company is smaller than it used to be. And one person who works from home has been with the company 5 years, and they're worried about retention.
Yeah, so actually it's interesting, Bill. Our business model is really based off of remote distributed workforces. That's where we got our start. I would say our first 50 clients were all in very similar in that niche. And it's so popular now. We have virtual office spaces, even like our bank down the road, they're an internet bank. They don't even have brick and mortar. And so it's really important, I would say, to have a medium for communication, whether that's like a Slack. That's a very popular channel where, and most of you are probably familiar. If you're not, check it out. Where if you're a computer-based, home-based worker that's on your computer, having a communication channel like a Slack that helps you feel like you're with your peers every single day. The other is having a tool that regularly helps you to connect and be able to see what's going on throughout the organization. I think is really important. So I would say, again, going back to communication, what is the best communication platform that allows your people, whether that's a mobile solution or a desktop solution, that allows your people to communicate as regularly as they can without touching and seeing each other every day.
Excellent, thank you. We have a question. We have a 24/7 operations. Do you see any trends in your studies?
24/7 operation, interesting. I mean, I think at the end of the day, when we did a 2-year study with Butler University out of Indianapolis to scientifically find these drivers of meaning, these 14 drivers, and those particular drivers overall aren't unique to, some particular industry. We might see the industries might have more of one than another, but they're across the board, the key drivers that every company needs, every employee on some level must have to really engage and find meaning in their work. So I would say, even though it's a 24/7 workplace, you might just find that there's certain drivers that are more prevalent than others. But the great thing is, once you measure and you figure out if these are the 4 that are most important because you guys work around the clock 24/7, then those are the ones you're going to hone in on to really keep an eye on the most. But I think you'd have to figure out your metrics on what you're measuring to figure out how it's unique to your particular workplace.
Makes sense. Nikki, how does compensation affect employee engagement?
Statistics show that it's 7th on the list. It's important, but it's not, I didn't mention it one time in this presentation today. And I would say fairness on our metrics, one of the drivers is fairness, and being paid fairly for the job that people do is really important. The other is having meaningful work. There's some employees that need pay and compensation more than others, like they rank it higher than others. Generally speaking, it's 7th on the list. So I think, again, going back to communication, you have to be in touch as a leader on what's important to that person. And like my brother personally, like he kind of laughs about what we do. He thinks that employee engagement's kind of fluffy. He's in the construction industry, and his number one thing is money. He's like, I just go to work. It's my main thing. Well, in unique cases, and some people, like, that is their main thing, is money. But I think that you as a leader have to figure out what drives your people and be able to have, whether that's, if you're able to do that just in one-on-one conversations, wonderful. Otherwise, you have to figure out a tool that helps you understand if that is most important, then you need to put an emphasis on that. But across the board, it's number 7.
Number 7, okay. Nikki Lewallen, a fascinating topic, well presented. Thank you so much for joining us and helping us learn about this topic today.
Thanks, Bill. It was really fun, guys.
Vistage members, remember we have a couple of upcoming webinars you should know about. Friday, July 28th at 10 a.m. Pacific time, the new multi-generational workforce. And on Friday, August 4th, 2017, 10 a.m. Pacific time, attracting and retaining talent, how benefit programs can provide a competitive edge. Friday, August 11th, 10 a.m. Pacific, how to conduct a talent and culture gap analysis. And on Friday, August 25th at 10 a.m. Pacific, your website's speed and security might be sabotaging your sales. So I want to thank you on behalf of Vistage Worldwide. This is Bill Black wishing you continued success, and this concludes the webinar.